Hey, how you doing? I was thinking today about black and white TVs because that's the way it was when I was a kid. The only TV we had was black and white. So I guess around 1950 or beginning 50s, they came out with the black and white sets. Now, by the 60s, I think most U.S. households had black and white TV. So it wasn't color TV until 64. Color sets started to come out. So almost no one had them, maybe like 3% of the people. But the color set that I remember getting as a kid was probably somewhere in the 73 range, probably around 1973 or so. We got a color TV. But TVs weren't like they are today. When you think about it, solid state is a big difference than these old TV tubes that were in the sets that I'm talking about back then. And of course, they had the huge CRT, the cathode ray tube, that was the main picture tube, as people called it, was the CRT. And it was the screen of the TV. Now, these TVs were rather large because of the CRT. You can get a flat screen TV that you hang on your wall today because it's all solid state and it has the film on the front of it. It doesn't have a tube. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's any tube at all in a TV today. So these large tubes all sat in a circuit board that was below the CRT in the TV. And it was shaped like a funnel. So on the back of the CRT were connections, and then it was narrow, and then it expanded out so that the face of it was like dome shape. So from the front of the set, it would look like it was rounded this way. Well, by no means were these foolproof. As a matter of fact, I know the TV, and you owned these TVs for a while. TVs were a large purchase for a family back in those days. And so you kept them. You didn't go through TVs like I know some people do today. So it was like a piece of furniture. It had, well, let's just start with the dimensions. This thing was probably 3 to 4 foot wide, and the depth of it was easily another 2.5, 3 feet easily. And they were built into wood cabinets. And they had built-in speakers. So the speakers were inside that big wood cabinet also. Sometimes they sat directly on the floor where there was no clearance under them, hardly at all. And sometimes they had short legs just to raise it up off of the floor a little bit. So you could get like a mop under there to mop under the TV set. So these tubes randomly would go bad. Well, you wouldn't know it until you turned on your TV one day and you didn't get any picture at all. But luckily, there was a small electronics TV/TV repair shop not too far in the little town that we lived in. And so what would happen was, in the evening, we would go to turn the TV on. Nothing. No picture. No nothing. So my dad and I would slide the TV out from the wall, take the back off of it, of course unplug it, and then pull these tubes out and put them in a box and take them to that small TV repair shop where they had a tube tester. So the tube tester was for public use. The guy who ran the shop owned it, and it had a flip booklet where you could look at the model number on this tube, and it would tell you the settings to set the knobs to on the tube tester, and then it would tell you what socket to plug this thing in. You would plug this thing into the socket. Now, some of the tubes, like this one, would have had an attachment also that went on top. So you would take that attachment, little cable, hook it on top of there, set all of your knobs to the settings that were in the book. Once you had all that ready, you would press this button, and a little analog meter would move to good. If it went the whole way over into the green section, that tube was good. It could be weak, or it could flat be bad, and you'd have hardly no movement. So let's say out of this box of tubes and stuff, maybe there was 11 tubes or so that we would have taken to the shop to test these, and then you would normally find what tube was bad. Well, on the same hand, the guy at the little shop had all these tubes on the wall behind his counter, and you would just go to the counter and tell him, hey, I need this tube, blah, blah, blah. He would look at, oh, okay, got that one, put it on the counter there, and you'd buy it right there at the shop. So he also made out because he's selling the tubes, and of course that would help him cover the cost of having that tube tester there in the shop for public use. But many times, right before you were getting ready to watch one of your favorite shows, you know, whether it was like Wild Wild West or Lost in Space or something like that, TV wouldn't work. Off to the repair shop we would go. Now, another difficult piece with these old TVs is the reception. You know, you're hooked up with your solid state TV today to the internet, and you expect perfect picture. It wasn't like that. Not at all. It was far from it. You might have had 3 stations or so that were close enough to you that you could get reception on your old tube TV set with your antenna on the roof. There was no cable TV or anything like that, and certainly no internet. So we had this big old clunky antenna up on a tower beside the house, and it had a rotor on it. Because depending on where the TV broadcast signal was coming from, you would want to point your antenna that direction to get the best reception on your TV set. And believe me, those things were a nightmare. So on top of the huge wooden cabinet was the rotary dial with directions, you know, like north, south, east, west, of where the antenna was pointing. So you would get this big clunky knob, and you would clunk, 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 clunk the whole way over to, oh, I think this best reception is going to be if I point this east. And you would watch the picture. At first it would be really snowy and fuzzy, and you wouldn't even be able to watch it. But as the antenna would turn around in that direction, it would start to get better. Sometimes you had a fine-tuning knob on the tuner, which was another clunky thing. Huge tuner that you would really have to move it, position it to what station you wanted. You know, is this station 3 or 8 or whatever was on your dial? Clunk it around to there. But then there could be a fine tuning knob on the outside perimeter of that to try to help you get a little better picture too. The biggest difference was where you pointed the antenna, obviously. And of course, some people had those little rabbit ears, which were set on top of your TV set, also like the clunky rotary knob. And they sometimes would work okay. They were just metal bands, basically, trying to act like an antenna for different stations. But you could usually get maybe 3 stations, on a good day. Of course, everything affected the weather, the time of the day. It seemed like one day the picture would be really good. You could see it nice and clear. But sometimes, depending on the time of the day or the weather or whatever, it would be fuzzy and stuff. You still would watch it, but it wasn't as good, And like I was saying with them big clunky knobs, there was no remote control. You didn't have a remote control. The remote control was usually me. And like when it was time to change the channel or whatever, my dad or mom would just go, hey, put it on channel so-and-so. I'd go over there, put the thing on there, try to tune it in, and then try to remember where the antenna belongs, Get the best picture you can get, and then you're good for another half hour, an hour, however long that TV show would last. There were at different times different shows on, depending on what day of week it was and everything. So you would know on Tuesday, we're going to watch Lost in Space or whatever it was. And you'd start to memorize, oh yeah, it's this channel for Lost in Space. Similar to what you do today. You know what channels, what shows are going to be. But we only had 3 of them at the time, so it was pretty easy to remember. So just remember, next time you're watching Lost in Space or one of those old black and white TV shows on your internet connection, it wasn't that clear back when we were watching them in the 60s and 70s. Not by any means. So, until the next time, take care of yourself, and I'll see you later.